Today's material is a transcript of a conversational show exploring Christian Zionism, where the speakers analyze social media arguments against Israel and dive into broader theological themes of human nature and divine justice. And diving right into our first piece of feedback, they really tackle these controversial social media clips head on.
They do, yeah. But relying on dismissive labels to categorize opposing viewpoints fundamentally undermines the analytical strength of the core arguments.
What exactly do you mean by dismissive labels here?
Well, the weakness is that the material frequently defaults to ad hominem attacks and, pathologizing language.
Oh, right, like diagnosing that one speaker with Israel derangement syndrome?
Exactly. Or calling them an absolutely insane individual.
Or referring to another as a bloody-hearted liberal spreading a nothing burger.
Right. And this approach reduces really complex geopolitical and theological disagreements to, mere name-calling.
Which alienates any listener who isn't already in total agreement.
Precisely. It actively diminishes the intellectual high ground the speakers are trying so hard to establish.
I mean, if an undecided listener tunes in, hearing phrases like nothing burger is just a massive stop sign.
It is. So the suggestion here is to frame the opposition's arguments objectively first.
Treat them as serious claims.
Yes, treat them seriously and then methodically dismantle them using the logical and theological frameworks already present in the discussion.
You want them to focus entirely on the substance of the error.
Exactly, rather than attacking the speaker's character.
So let's walk through some concrete examples of how they can actually do that.
Sure. So instead of stating that a creator named Kaylee has a cognitive way of functioning problem,
which is a bit of a low blow.
Yeah. Instead of that, isolate her specific claim that Jesus was killed by the church.
Oh, right, because they can easily demonstrate why that is historically impossible.
Exactly. They just need to establish the timeline of the early Christian church versus first-century Roman Judea. Let the factual deconstruction do the heavy lifting.
And what about the second activist they discuss?
Rather than immediately dismissing her words as Marxist or a nothing burger, they should explicitly state her demand for the repatriation of Jewish settlers.
Just calmly place the actual claim on the table.
Right. And then counter it directly with the geographical and historical counterpoints the speakers already possess regarding the indigenous roots in Judea.
Taking away the name-calling actually makes the hosts sound infinitely more confident.
It really does.
Okay, well, let's look closely at the section discussing the establishment of Israel in 1948 and the concepts of stolen versus purchased land.
Yeah, this is a critical juncture.
Because they make some pretty broad strokes here, right?
They do. And bolstering colloquial historical claims with specific documented milestones will significantly elevate the material's persuasive authority.
Because right now, the weakness is that when countering the narrative of stolen land, the arguments rely on highly generalized statements.
Exactly. They say things like, countries are won by conquest and the rule of war.
Or they casually assert that the land was simply purchased by tycoons.
Right. And while these broad strokes make for fast-paced conversation, treating profound historical events casually leaves the arguments highly vulnerable to easy counterattack.
It just fails to satisfy listeners who are looking for robust, defensible facts.
Yes, it does. So the suggestion is to anchor the historical counterarguments with concrete terminology, documented historical mechanisms, and precise timelines.
You're saying they need to shift the argument from casual opinion to undeniable historical record.
Exactly that.
So what are some concrete examples of adding that historical weight without sounding like a dry textbook?
Well, when arguing that the land was purchased rather than stolen, the speaker should briefly elevate the point by referencing actual historical frameworks.
Like the organized land purchases made by Jewish organizations?
Yes, the ones in the late 19th and early 20th centuries under the Ottoman Empire. Just mentioning Ottoman land laws provides an accurate picture without stalling the momentum.
Right. And when discussing the 1948 establishment?
Instead of just saying every country was either stolen or purchased, or that Israel won the land fair and square.
Which kind of concedes the premise that it was taken unjustly, just that everyone else does it too.
Exactly. Instead of doing that, anchor this by mentioning the 1947 UN partition
or the surrounding historical context of the subsequent defensive wars.
Exactly. Briefly explaining that the United Nations proposed a partition, which was rejected, leading to a defensive war, provides the exact historical architecture the listener needs to understand the fair and square comment.
It arms the listener with the tools they need to have these rigorous conversations themselves.
Precisely.
Now, as I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the latter half of the transcript shifts from Middle Eastern geopolitics to the Epstein files and Karl Marx.
It's quite a leap.
It is.
Integrating disparate cultural touchpoints without clear transitional scaffolding heavily dilutes the primary focus on modern anti-Zionism.
It felt very jarring to read.
And that is exactly the weakness. The pivot from dissecting pro-Palestine TikTok videos and discussing Palestinian statehood directly into a lengthy speculative segment on the Epstein files
And later mentioning Karl Marx and Billie Eilish.
Right. It feels completely disjointed. Because these pivots lack a structural bridge, the secondary topics feel like distracting tangents rather than supporting evidence.
Which really pulls the listener away from the core premise of analyzing Gen Z's attitudes toward Jewish people.
It does. It stalls the momentum entirely. So the suggestion here is to create explicit thematic bridges when incorporating external news items, ensuring they directly serve the main thesis.
And if an external topic cannot be tightly linked to the core theme.
Then it should be saved for a completely separate discussion. Cut it entirely from this one.
Okay, give us some concrete examples of how to build those thematic bridges for the topics they did include.
Sure. So if the Epstein files must be included to illustrate a point about human depravity and divine justice, explicitly introduce the segment as a broader reflection on the flaws of human morality.
Just state it directly up front.
Yes, explicitly state the desire for true justice we see debated in the Middle East is the exact same cry for justice we see when looking at global scandals like the Epstein files.
Oh, that connects it perfectly. It maintains the protagonist's journey, so to speak.
Right. Alternatively, use the discussion about Epstein solely to highlight the danger of the normalization of evil.
Which is a concept the speakers actually brought up earlier regarding social media.
Exactly. It ties the two disparate topics together under a single thematic umbrella. And they can do the exact same thing with Karl Marx.
Right. Instead of just bringing up a book, one of the hosts read about Marx being a Satanist, which leaves the audience to do all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. They need to explicitly say, the reason we are bringing up Karl Marx right now is because his framework of oppressor versus oppressed power dynamics is exactly what is driving the arguments in the TikTok video we just watched.
That single sentence completely transforms the tangent into a foundational pillar of their main argument.
It really is all about intentionality.
It absolutely is. So, to succinctly recap our main points today, to maximize the impact of this highly passionate material, the focus should first be on refining the argumentative tone by dismantling ideas rather than insulting speakers.
Definitely.
Second, grounding historical claims in specific documented facts, like the 1947 partition plan, rather than broad generalizations.
Yes.
And finally, building strong thematic bridges to keep tangential topics perfectly aligned with the core thesis.
Spot on. We warmly invite you to apply these structural and tonal adjustments and submit your revised work back in for another constructive critique.
Thanks for tuning in.